Welcome back to the podcast. I have a beautiful guest. You may have heard her before. We have Harmony Scott with us today, who I absolutely adore. We've connected so many times over the years. Harmony is a love and life and intimacy coach. And welcome, for starters. Welcome again. Welcome back.
Oh, Kim, thank you so much for having me. It's just such a pleasure.
It really is. I'm having a beautiful day with some of my most favorite coaches podcasting today. And it's just like, it's actually turning me on. It's a beautiful day. So, we're going to dive into the tantric path through heartbreak and grief today, into erotic, rebirth,
Yes.
reclamation, all of that juiciness, right? Because let's be honest, like we all have heartbreak and grief, whether it's current, whether it's past. It is deeply living in our bodies from the wounding, from the pain. And the reclamation is the journey on the way back to finding ourselves, to healing, to opening into the most delicious, positive, powerful, more aligned relationships. We've both done this. And it's not always an easy journey, especially when you're in the rupture. But for those of you who are listening, who are in the depths and the trenches of the rupture, it's pretty fucking amazing on the other side when you hold true to yourself.
It is so worth it to do that journey. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So let's start a little bit with your journey
Mm,
of what that looks like. Let's give us a lifetime summary here.
okay.
And then I can give mine if we feel aligned. And then we'll just kind of like see what that looks like and what the healing journey looks like into erotic rebirth.
Absolutely. Oh, this is such a juicy topic. Okay, so I'm Harmony, and I was raised by a very bohemian family who my mother and father separated very young. My mother moved to Hawaii when I was 2 years old, which is where I am now. And I wanted to say, if you hear chickens, roosters in the background, because I'm on Kauai and there is millions of wild jungle fowl here. So they will be accompanying us on our tantric path to rebirth today, heralding the dawn. Anyway, so I grew up between Hawaii and Colorado, between my two parents, father in Colorado, on a wilderness. We were like homesteaders, so it was a very back to the earth kind of a situation. So I had a really beautiful childhood in a lot of ways, but I also, in Hawaii, when I was 4, I went through sexual assault, rape as a child, and that just changed my whole experience of being a child, being a woman, growing up carrying that. And unfortunately, it really shut me down in a lot of ways where I was very expressed and creative and confident in so many ways. It created this deep wound, I believe, along with all the other pieces that all of us carry around being a woman in this world. Anyway, so that it led to like a lifetime of sexual shutdown, and but also was the seed to my own rebirth. That rebirth was finally had a partner. I was a jewelry designer for over 20 years. I was very successful, lived between Bali and Colorado. So I had a very creative life, beautiful life, but there's something always missing. And I battled with depression, suicidal ideation throughout my life, and always seemed to have this people pleasing, taking on the burden of all the people around me, especially my partners. And then my partner of 16 years, he got cancer and passed away. And that was my first real journey through deep grief. And the rebirth of that has spurred several layers since then, because that was over 10 years ago now. So anyway, through that process, I found tantric meditation, I found sexual healing. So my 40s were basically 10 years of reclamation, of sexual healing, of learning, of going more into erotic dance and tantric practices, neuropsychology, all, doing the training that you did. That's how we met through Vita. But on that path, I learned how to do a lot of shadow work as well, and to really be with those pieces of myself that still felt like that inner child, those broken pieces, those disowned parts. And while I won't say that that life is perfect, because I think we're just on this evolutionary path. And that's why I'm a tantric practitioner, is because we hold all of it. We hold the messy human parts, we hold the divine, beautiful parts, and they all belong. And so that path of really owning all the parts and then continually moving towards growth and evolution and awakening is how I've held all these pieces. So in the most recent past, in the last year, I left a beautiful love, my partner in Spain, and deep heartbreak over our relationship dissolving pretty quickly, from one of the most beautiful, powerful relationships in my life, to finding that he had been withholding some pretty important truths from me. And I also played my part, and I saw how I had been avoiding truth in this one area around our sexuality and our relationship agreements. And when the truth came to light, I was no longer able to be in the relationship. And it wasn't because I didn't love him or he didn't love me. So that was a deep, deep heartbreak for me, was to leave someone who, in so many ways, I deeply cherished, loved, respected, and had such a special relationship, to really have to choose myself and walk away from that situation. And holding myself through that grief has been one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. I was saying to a friend the other day, I feel like I'm this complex flavor, like this dish with all of these different spices. Like there's the bitter, there's the sweet, there's the umami, there's this, all of the spices are in me now. And I feel like it's just, it's made me just such a richer, deeper person.
I love that reflection, comparing to, a dish. And yeah, like just summarizing from that, we don't need to run from our pain. We don't need to, hide and ignore and sweep under the rug. When we actually embrace it and lean into it and do our healing work, more love comes, more expansion comes, more joy comes. And in the beginning, I remember it's scary. I remember like, I'm going to hit these depths where I don't know where I'm going, right? And yet, when I keep choosing me and keep choosing my aligned pelvic bowl, pussy truth, it leads me to the exact right place every single time, where it's better and better and better than I ever could have imagined.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key pieces here is that we just have to cultivate that deep trust, because there are those moments when you're like, how is this all going to work out? How is this going to make sense? And there's that part of us that wants to control, that wants to figure it out, that of course, there's this part of us that through our whole life is trying to protect us and trying to survive and trying to navigate and be vigilant about all the moving pieces in our life that might harm us or be painful. And through working with the shadow pieces, what I've really come to understand is, like you said, when we can turn and welcome all of the pieces of ourselves and experience the duality that might be presenting, to see that it is part of a whole, right? It is part of our humanity and our divinity. And that pain and dismantling is creating something new, right? And there's just going to be layers of that throughout our life. And I'm at this point now where I'm, in my early 50s, and I've been through this process many times, and there's always going to be that part of me that's like, oh yeah, we're done now. And it's like, no. We're never done. And at this point, I think it's really in a way of facing life, to know that, like, right now things are so good in my life, and I feel so blessed, and I'm deeply in love with a new partner, and all these exciting opportunities are coming, and I feel like I'm having all this growth. But I also hold it lightly, because I know that in this time of expansion, there will be a time of contraction, because that is just the nature of the universe. And so while I can drink sweetly of what is here now, I also hold it lightly, and I don't grasp into, like, I can't let this go. Like this, there's that fear, like the shoe's going to drop, or like, and that's just life. Like, and just to cultivate the tools that you know so well, that we use with our clients, to help them navigate when those contractions come, when the bad news or the illness or the death or the separation, the grief, the heartbreak, because that's part of the human experience. And it's not something to be try to expunge or guard against. It's something to, yeah, of course we do our best to not walk into these situations blind, but a lot of it we just is out of our control, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And for those who are listening, maybe it's your first episode or second, you don't know my full story. I'll give a really quick summary along that as well, where, parents divorced at 5, mother left, not father, raised by father for a few years, or many years actually in there, 6, 7 years in there. Stepmother came in, literally turned abusive the day they got married, verbally, physically, mentally. Finally, my grandmother, my granny, who, listened and found out, got us out of that house, went to live with my mother and stepfather, who'd been my stepfather since I was 6. And a year and a half later, he sexually assaulted me. And, I was devastated, right? He'd been my stepfather for so many years. I knew I had nowhere else to go. And it was like, what next? So I told my mother. And then within the next morning, she believed me, but then within a few hours betrayed me. And still to this day, even when I confronted her at 40, um, thinks I made it up, right? And will say so to my face. She won't talk to me anymore, and that is okay. There was toxicity there that I needed to remove from. And yeah, I was married for 26 years. I have 3 amazing children. But again, I went through this marriage, and I say I went through because it is done, it is over, where I was numb, right? I was shut down. I was people pleasing. I was conforming to fit in. I wanted the picture, right? I wanted the picket fence and the house and the children, right? And the dogs. And you want that. And nobody teaches us how to be our true authentic selves. And over years, we were talking earlier on a podcast today, it's like the walls start closing in. So as I
Mm-hmm.
pushed through my 30s and coming up to 40s, the walls got so tight that I couldn't do it anymore. And I had to go on my own exploration journey and reclaim myself, my power, my sovereignty, my truth, heal my sexuality, heal the shame, heal from the traumas. I still am, right? It's never going to stop. That's the point of it. As you said, it's a journey through, and you never know what's going to trigger. But now we have the tools to hold it and to
Mm-hmm.
alchemize it and to integrate it and to move through it in a conscious way that is not sweeping it under the rug. There's no more sweeping it under the rug. I decided eventually to actually, it was my daughter who pushed me probably a year and a half ago, who looked at me one night at a hockey tournament and said, I love you, but I fucking hate you two together, about
Oh,
her mother and her father.
ooh,
And I was like,
wow.
holy fuck, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I modeling for my children, who at the time were 17, 20, and 23, right? What am I
Mm-hmm.
modeling? Obviously, this is not healthy, but I was, still kind of stuck in some, just trying to get by, right? Survive. As much as I was empowered and had really reclaimed myself and was living my life and felt true, I kept having downloads that I had to leave. And I was so scared to leave,
Yeah,
so scared to leave because of, different dynamics that were happening. We're still in the middle of divorce, so I'm not going to share them all. But I
yeah.
was so afraid to leave. And also, even still, thought, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make
Mm-hmm.
this work? Right? There's still that underneath.
That
And it was,
conditioning and programming.
yeah. And everybody's going to think I'm insane. Look at me. I have the perfect fucking life, perfect fucking everything. And who am I to leave? Right. And once again, I trusted myself. My daughter gave me the little push, maybe a little
Yeah.
earlier than I was going to, but a little push, because I knew she was watching and my boys were watching too. And I made that decision. And I feel like I've been doing my work for the last, 8+ years in the marriage. And literally on the other side, it was not what I was expecting. I was like, let's just start dating. Haven't dated in 26 years.
That's a
And
whole other subject.
that was a whole other subject. I'm like almost 49, right? And literally the universe was like, it kind of felt like a good job, Kim. Here you go. And like this man, this beautiful man literally landed on my lap.
Ooh.
And oh yeah, ooh. And it's been powerful. I knew from the beginning that we were going to do some very big things together, and there was just downloads. And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, I think we're going to be coaching together one day." And he's like, "No." And I was like, "Okay, I'm just the messenger. It's not me. I just there's things coming out." And it's been a beautiful journey. It has
Oh.
obviously had its moments, like every relationship has, but every time I lean in and I use the tools that we're so deeply studied and
Mm-hmm.
use on a regular basis to integrate, to create safety in my body, to speak my truth, to ask for what I need, to ground, to be in my pleasure. All of these things, every time I lean in, we just keep creating more and more vulnerability and intimacy and connection and just alignment that I could have never dreamed of. I never even knew this was possible,
It's just
ever.
just hearing your words and just so mirrors my experience as well. Like the details are different, but the overall trajectory, it lights me up to see the radiance and the joy emanating from you and the courage it takes to step into that vision for yourself and to create that, to like when you were talking about the people pleasing and I wanted the white picket fence and I wanted to have that experience. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that, right? Like not only that, like we have this Disney or this vision of what love and what life should be, and then we might achieve it, right? And then there's a part of us that might feel dead or constrained or boxed in, like you said. And it's incredibly challenging. Like I understand why people stay in those situations half dead, half shut down, because it is a huge, huge leap to step away. Um, and
It's hard.
I,
It's
you
challenging.
know, but through that, if I could give a piece of courage, is that on the other side, like you expressed, is the most beautiful gifts of that. Of
Mm.
it is like the universe goes, okay, you've wandered through the forest, you've climbed the mountain, you've forged the raging river, and here you are, and here is the gift on the other side,
Hmm.
and the gift is exquisite.
It really, really is.
It can be. And I at this point, I kind of, I think it's beautiful that we're talking kind of in this meta way of like, like looking at our lives and maybe giving a few examples. But I would like to talk about, maybe for both of us, to talk about holding, so then we leave the situation or we gather
Yeah.
the courage, and
Getting ready.
that's actually just the first step, right? Because it is a huge step and it feels insurmountable, but then when we do go, okay, I've got to get out of this situation, this is not serving me, I'm going to choose myself. And I think something that's been really helpful for me and is a constant reminder for me is that I am in relationship with myself. I'm my primary partner, and that's how I look at
Mm.
it now. Is like, and that's not like that means I don't have relationships or I don't have community, but I trust that if I'm in alignment and in integrity with my values first, if I'm because I also such deep people pleasing, such deep patriarchal, like you serve the man, you give up, you pretzel yourself to fit his desires, like, even though partners didn't even ask that of me, that
Hmm.
conditioning is so deep that I so unconsciously was doing that in my relationship, even my last relationship. And when I really saw it, I was like here I've done, like you, so much work, a lifetime of work. And these patterns are so deep that I think that we need to give ourselves a lot of grace, that when we do see the pattern, we finally kind of wake up and see it. And there's that deep grief of like, how could I abandon myself on this level?
Mm.
Like, how could
Hmm.
I go against my values at this level? The instinct is to self-attack or to make ourselves wrong or to blame ourselves. And this is the moment when we have to bring in the deepest, tenderest love. That's the place where we use the practices to kind of hold the container of that heartbreak around ourselves,
Mhm.
to move through that. And for me, that looked like doing grief rituals. It looked like having containers to really express grief, rage,
Rage. Yeah.
rage, you know, like,
Fear.
and
I had to do fear too. Oh, I was so
oh,
afraid to leave. I had to grieve
mm,
leaving my house that I built 20 years ago too, right? There was a lot of fears that had to process slowly.
absolutely, absolutely. And so I was just wondering if it might be helpful for your listeners to, like, for each of us to kind of share like a little snapshot of like how we would hold ourselves in a moment
Yeah.
where the grief, the rage, the fear feels paralyzing and overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it is almost paralyzing and overwhelming. And these are the tantric practices and the nervous system regulation practices and the somatic practices that you and I have practiced for years. And I had to use them
Yeah,
hard.
yeah.
I had to regulate because what happens is if you're dysregulated, if you're in a trauma response, like if I'm in fear, which I was in some parts, I could feel I can't even think straight. I can't even think straight. So I had to lean into people, and I will brag here. I have an incredible team. One of the
Mm,
first people I reached out to, I was volunteering at the Sexual Assault Center at the time, and there is another side, a court support system over on the other side. And I reached out, and I knew it'd be 3 months to reach out and work with them. But she saw that I was a volunteer. She called me the next morning,
ooh,
right? Oh, yeah. So she held me and held me there. And then I did some grief rituals and some rage rituals. And I learned, I had to move this energy because I couldn't think straight, right? You're in like a trauma response, technically. The other things that I had to do and needed to do was I hired support. I hired a divorce coach. I hired a divorce financial analyst. These are some key pieces that I had to use
mm-hmm.
debt. I had to
Grounded.
use debt to help me hold. And then, of course, there's the tantric practices where coming back to my pelvic bowl and my truth of the core of who I am and listening to my inner wisdom. And even though my head was like, "Are you sure?" My body was like, "Yes." Right. And I had to keep trusting my body. So that took some work over the last many years, right? Learning how to trust my body, learning how to trust my pelvic bowl, my sexual
Mm,
power center, because that is our guiding light for a female identifying body. And when we're disconnected from our sexuality and we have sexual trauma and shame, we can't listen to her. So
exactly.
that was some of my work first, right? To heal that so I could listen
Yeah.
because the truth was always there. The
Mm-hmm.
truth was always there. I even had a download in 2020 or 2021 during a sacred tantric practice. I don't even remember which one it was. And I think I was doing some manifestation of sorts for my business, right? To really expand my business. And the message was, you need to leave your marriage before it's going to expand. And I was like, fuck off.
Ooh, you're like, yeah, later.
Later, I can't. Like, I can't. I need to be
Right.
self-sustaining, is my message I had to myself first. And it kept coming through and it did get stronger. And I ignored it for a few years, right? It was like, okay, fine, right? So it was there. The messages were there, but I had to use my tools. So what else? So raging and feeling, like the biggest thing is feeling. We're so conditioned to put away our emotions and suck it up and push through, and that hurts us. We can't think, we're dysregulated. The tension is building up in us and it becomes too much to bear. So we can turn to alcohol, drugs, numbing out by overworking. There's so many things we can turn to. So instead I had to, no, feel these emotions, feel the fear, feel the rage, feel the grief, feel the uncertainty. What else did I do? A lot of walking. Oh my gosh.
Mm,
And
yes.
this is crazy and amazing. So I also play with HDMR, right? Which is, going back and forth and regulating through, what is the word? Okay, I can't pull it right out of my head right
Mm,
now, but it's using both sides of your body. And I did a lot of walking. And just this weekend, I was at a Tantra festival with April, who you also know. And she was like, "Did you know that walking is HDMR? You're technically using paddles left, right, left, right, left, right." And I was like, of course I did.
right.
But I didn't, right? So, regulating nervous system, walking every day, getting
Absolutely.
out. um, listening to music, grounding in my truth. I had to use notes and journaling also to how do I feel today? Actually, for about
Mm-hmm.
4 months, I had to write down how much do I want to leave today? And I had to write it in my locked phone note because I kept forgetting when he was nice. I put air quotes on that.
Yes.
I kept forgetting when we would go out and he was all lovey-dovey and nice. And I was like, am I stupid? Like, what's happening here? So I actually had to start writing down every single day on a score of 1 to 10 how much I wanted to leave. And I
What a
made notes
interesting.
beside it. I
Yeah.
had to because I actually had to keep going back for a few months to read it.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a little mind fuck sometimes, the way your brain
Absolutely.
starts to
Absolutely.
bring in doubt and fear and so forth.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
And I
Yeah.
listen to a lot of podcasts.
Right.
A
Me too.
lot.
Yes. Right. And I think that when we're on this journey of the rupture, whatever the rupture is, whether it's illness, death, divorce, some other losing our job or some other thing that arises, it's like we don't have a vision of who we're going to become. So there is like this tremendous courage and self-trust, and like you're describing, like finding a connection to an inner voice, which, as you said, and like for cis or like women who identify with and have this experience of being in a female body, we do have these organs literally and hormones and this system that is built to help us connect within. And there's a bit of a double-edged sword, which I think you described, because we are so present and our bodies change moment to moment, day to day, our hormone levels fluctuate. In one moment we can forget. We are so much in that present moment that if someone is showing up with love in a moment, it's hard to remember in that moment all the times they didn't. And so that practice you described of like really tracking granularly, today, and then being able to review that could be a really strong practice for someone who is having that experience with a partner who shows up really differently, or even a job that like one day is good and one day is bad, but the deep wisdom is like, I need to leave this. This is, and yet the money's not in place. The next job has not appeared yet. And they're trying to trust that voice. And the other piece I'd say is it's timing. Like sometimes we have to sit in that hot water and it starts boiling around us. And as long as we keep listening and trusting, like there is going to be a moment, like in the reggae song, strike the hammer when the iron is hot. It's like you have to choose that moment when you are as ready as you can be, and your whole body will know. And that's why we do the practices, to stay in tune with that voice that may have been whispering and then speaking louder and louder, and finally it's like, do it now. And it sounds like for you, it was it's your daughter who like was that voice that kindly broke through. And
Yeah.
sometimes it is, and that's why we do need layers of support. I call it, like people who have
Yes,
the
I was going to say we
capacity
need
to speak.
support.
We do, because we can't do it alone. And this is the other thing, like people listening to this podcast, or this, or watching this, may or may not have the embodied experience of all these practices, all the teachers we've studied through, and they're like, how do I do this alone? And I would say, it's really, really hard to do it alone, because your nervous
It
system
is
will be
hard.
dysregulated. And but it's not impossible, but you just have to go slower. But I would say, as much as possible, finding a support group, finding a friend who you do trust, and as many as possible. Like just one voice
Yes.
sometimes is not enough. Sometimes we
No, you
need
need a
we need
few.
the
I
constellation to hold us.
Yeah, the Sexual Assault Center. I had my best friend, April, who I talk to every day. I had divorce coach, podcast. I actually worked a lot with Jenny too, Braxton, who
Mm,
coached me through a bunch of sessions, and I coached her through a bunch of sessions. I had a lot of support, and we need it. And in the beginning, I listened to podcasts. Like I went to the trailer and I power washed the trailer with podcasts on 2 times speed for an entire weekend
mhm.
on getting information, right? Knowledge is power, and I needed the information and how to hold what I was going to go through. And that goes with everything. right? But it keeps coming back to, we have to feel it. We have to feel it. And I know it feels really scary, but we need to. And I'd like to hear, what were your tools? What
Mm.
practices did you keep coming back to? I'm sure there's more that I've missed too. So share.
Yeah, I would say that journaling has always been something. So I have a strong morning practice. So that looks for me, my devotional practice, which, you know, for everyone who has different spiritual beliefs or whatever might look different for you. But for me, I really have a practice of devotion to the divine and that divine within me, that inner beloved. So I show up to that every day. You know, of course, sometimes I miss it, but like, especially during this time, it was like waking up in the morning, doing breath work, sitting and doing my tantric meditation, movement practice, dancing, and journaling. Like, and not
Mm-hmm.
every day would I do all of those, you know, and some mornings I would miss, but in the evening I would do it. It's like I'd find times to fit it in. Being in nature, a lot of hiking, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
sitting by water, you know, which I had access to living by
Point, yes.
in
I
the
did the same,
Mediterranean.
yeah.
Yeah, and but I'd say one of the what I would like to speak to is our minds, like you said, can get so busy, and the stories are rich and interesting that we're living through, right? He did this, she said that, this circumstance, and we can easily become a victim in the story that's playing out in our mind. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we may actually be a victim. We may actually, in a real sense, but to alchemize this, there is a specific way that Tantra taught me to sit with the emotions. Is like, so you start in a practice, you maybe start seated or writing or whatever, and really go into the story. Allow yourself to have the story. Allow myself to have the story. And the emotions come up, the resentment, the betrayal, the grief, the rage, the sadness. Really feel it. And then drop the story. Drop the story and stay with the emotions in the body. And this is difficult for a mind that wants to always be following a story, because every time we get back into the story loop, it reactivates those hormone surges, this busy mind in our body. So we start going in a loop.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's very easy to go in a loop when you're going through grief, betrayal, rage, whatever, you know, we go into the story is very seductive. And
Mm-hmm.
but we need to find a way to alchemize it. So the way to alchemize it is to drop into the sensations in the body, breathe into them, and use an embodiment practice, whether that's turning on music and dancing it or beating pillows, but have it contained. The key is like to not let it flood your life, like take over the whole
Mm-hmm.
day. It's especially in these kinds of practices, like set a timer, 5 minutes,
10, 20
10
minutes.
minutes,
Yep.
15, 20, have a soundtrack for it, go into it, turn towards it, like whatever that emotion. For me, it was a lot of grief. It was a deep
Mm-hmm.
grief of like how I'd abandoned myself and how then my partner reflected that by abandoning our relationship agreements. And abandonment's not the right word. They'd disrespected, you
Mm-hmm.
know, disrespected and and betrayed me, you know, and that was the
Mm-hmm.
story. And I betrayed myself in staying in this. And so that story was very powerful, but I had to drop into the embodied sensation of the grief of how that landed in my system and breathe through it, be with it, alchemize it, allow it, cry. And when that timer went off, soothe, soothe, give
Pleasure.
myself self massage, pleasure, go for a swim, take a shower, talk to a friend, you know,
Bath, walk, you name it.
yes, eat good food, nourishing food, you
Yeah.
know,
You have to
whatever it
throw a
is,
lot of pleasure at it
a
because
lot
that's
of
nervous
pleasure.
system regulating.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of tools out there. There's tools that I've been using called neurosomatic intelligence. There's so many different systems now. We live
Mm-hmm.
in a time when there's so much available,
Yeah, I
but
used
but
your
it
free
is
practices last summer in the trailer, right? You were doing some breath work and I was like, I need it, right? Like
right,
I
right.
need some extra work. Like grab
Yeah,
what you can grab to
yeah,
take advantage to hold yourself.
yeah,
Breathwork is another powerful tool. And I went to the trailer
absolutely.
almost every weekend, and I made it a long weekend. So I was in the forest alone, right? Where I could do more
Mm,
practices, where I could
yeah.
a lot
Mm.
of, yeah, and a lot of breathwork. I forgot about breathwork. You need these tools.
The
You
other
need these
piece I would
tools.
speak to is ritual. Um,
Yes.
we have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, and ritual is a part of the human psyche that we need, that we've lost a lot. Like people who are maybe more traditionally religious might even have more access to ritual than people who are more, just living their lives, and have. So finding ritual, like for example, like what I'd love to offer your listeners today. I don't know if you offer this, but I have a beautiful grief ritual that's a PDF. It's a step-by-step guide of how to hold this for yourself, and also it's good to have a friend witness. But doing a grief ritual around something that's broken your heart, around an experience you're going through, is really an important piece, just to allow ourselves to drop into the experience, really honor it, and do some kind of an activity where we're showing up in devotion to the experience, making an offering, and doing a ritual honoring. And ritual can be very simple. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be simple or elaborate as you want, but it's just like setting an intention to kind of go into a different space, to have it in a contained time where I'm doing this right now, and you have a witness, and you write a letter to your grief, and you make, and to yourself, and you make a promise to yourself about how I'm gonna show up next, and then like burning that and making offerings.
It's great.
Yeah. And
even such a ritual as putting on like essential oils and just taking a moment and taking 5-6 breaths with it. Like they can be simple and elaborate. Like we can do lots of little rituals to support and hold ourselves. Yes. I love burning, especially if you're going through something that you don't want people to see. You can use a foil pan and do it in the kitchen sink with the fan on. There's so many different ways. You can take it outside and burn it in a foil pan. You can do it outside on concrete, or you can throw it in a fire. There's lots of ways to remove,
especially people who like to control.
Yeah.
Burning is a really good way to create like just like an arc, just have an experience of like letting go and seeing that flame consume that letter you just spent 20 minutes writing, or whatever it is. It's just like it really acts on the whole mind body spirit system to show that a shift is happening. And that's how we walk from rupture back into wholeness, is these little steps.
And the heartbreak and grief is there. It's there through our entire lives, and it's how we hold it. I didn't used to hold it well, right? In my childhood and teens and 20s and even 30s, it was rupture after rupture after grief, with depression, with, not trusting myself, with showing up, not feeling, great. There was so much pain, and it was hard. Life was really, really hard. And not that life's any easier now. However, it feels so much easier. It feels true. It feels authentic. It feels integrated. It feels held. I feel held and supported. And there's this deep trust within my body that no matter what, I've got this. And Tantra has allowed this for me. You've mentioned a few times divinity. And, Tantra is about divinity. It's about connection, both and to ourselves, to each other, to the universe, to the earth, to the animals, to our partners, to our children, to everything, right? Like seeing and connecting with that divinity, that aliveness that is there. It's all there. I'd love to know, though, your definition per se of Tantra.
My definition of Tantra is recognizing that we are emanations of the one consciousness. The divine, in my experience, is that all of the universe, all of the seen and unseen realms are one big consciousness, one big awareness. And the divinity in that is the awakening consciousness. Like here we have this experience where we are in this body and we can look at ourselves, we can create, we can direct these beautiful tools of our minds to understand, to reflect. And that is the doorway for us to connect to the whole, like to the remembering, like putting it back together, reconnecting, that we're not just these worker bees who are like eating and doing all of the
Working 60
basic
hours a week.
functions and working and grinding ourselves and going through life and birth and death, and all of that's beautiful and that's true. But there's also this experience where we can step into seeing ourselves connected to the whole. And so a practice that I love with that is really cultivating that sense of the inner beloved, which is my unique connection to the whole, my unique connection to the divine, which is the channel of divine love that I can connect to. And it's like that inner relationship and that inner devotional practice to show up to that higher, I don't like to use the word higher necessarily, but like the more awakened, more expanded part of
Wisdom.
myself. Yeah, the
Yeah,
wise
the
part.
innate inner wisdom that lives within each of us. But
Yeah.
we've learned how to tune it out and not listen to it. And this is Tantra is to me also this path of reconnecting and remembering what is already there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. And also honoring it doesn't have to be perfect. This is the thing that I love about Tantra. It's like it's willing to get down into the mud, with you and the broken shambles of my heart and your heart, and hold that as exquisite and beautiful and perfect too. Like
Yes.
and being able to stay in the void, because the void state is like, we don't know how this is going to look on the other side. We don't know what it's going to be like when
Trusting.
we walk out the door. We don't know what it's going to be, what's going to happen when we leave the job or sign the divorce papers, or our partner walks in and says they want a divorce from us and we're blindsided. Like stepping into the void is incredibly powerful, but it holds all the potentialities of our future, but we can't rush through it. And so these practices and doing this work and finding a coach to work with, a therapist, having a community helps us stay in the void state, because as soon as we leap to comfort, we will be repeating old patterns, because that's what we know. Our mind wants to go, and our body often too, parts of us will want to go back to what we've already known and what we've already experienced, because it feels safe. But
Even
safety
if it was
is
painful. Even if it was painful, we
no,
think that
yes,
it feels safer. Yes.
exactly. So we do need support to stay in the void until the whatever the new situation arises, and then we get that full like, oh yes, this is it. That trust, that next step.
I
So
love that you brought in the void. Um, I've been saying for well, almost over a year. There's part of my life. My divorce coach, which shout out to her. It's Alicia Robinson with Lemonade Life. She's freaking amazing. And I've been feeling like I've been in limbo. But she tells me, to put the divorce project. It's a project. It goes to the side. It does not consume your entire life, which of course I love. So it's a project. It's just like anything else you pick up and you work on. And yet sometimes, especially right now, is one of those times where I keep saying I feel like I'm in limbo, right? And you just put more words called the void, which we've been playing with the void at the Tantra Festival this weekend, to my limbo. So yeah, the limbo is the void. It's like you're just floating, waiting, trusting,
yeah.
and remembering that you've got this and the universe has got you no matter what. And it might not be the way that you think it's going to be, but it will be most likely better than you ever could imagine on the other side. Like the universe literally is working with us. And we simply
Yes,
need to trust and not try and control and force, because it's just an illusion anyway. There is no control.
absolutely. There's two other little simple things that I like to do that might seem silly, but they're really helpful for me. And I know that when we're going through an experience that's big and intense, there's all these little micro decisions that we need to make along the way. So I find the things that support me to make decisions when I'm not sure, do I do this thing tonight? Do I not? I call it my goddess coin, and it's just like this
Yes.
big fat euro that I've just blessed to like help me in those moments when I'm really ambivalent, where I'm not sure if it's a yes or a no. I try not to do big decisions with this, but like little micro movements, like, do I stay in tonight and cultivate my energy, or do I say yes to that invitation and go out, or the yes or no decisions, or do I go on this trip? Do I not? Like even things like that. I use my goddess coin to help me. I just breathe a few times, and then I notice how I feel when the answer comes up. And
Yes.
usually it's just such a relief. It's like, okay, no, I'm not doing that thing tonight. Or yes, I am going to go wake up early and go walk on the beach, or whatever it is. But then also sometimes I'll get a hit where I'll get a download where it clarifies for me that I actually really did want something that I wasn't allowing myself to see. Like
Yes.
when I get the no and I'm like, oh, I wish it had been yes. That's information
Then
too.
you know, yes,
Right.
I love this.
That's
We have a
information
couple
too.
silver dollars. I brought out some like 1965 silver dollars and 50-cent pieces around the house for my partner and I. And that's how we're playing with trusting intuition of how, his question was, how do I know if I'm listening? How do I know if it's the right answer? And as you flip the coin, and if heads is always a yes, and if you get a yes and you're like, oh, fuck, you know your answer. If you get
Right.
the yes, you're like, yes, you know your answer. And that's a
Yeah.
great way to cultivate trusting. And that's why I brought out some very special coins for it. It felt, I like it, the
Yes.
goddess coins,
Yeah.
silver pieces. They don't make them
Yeah.
anymore. And
Yeah.
nice, good, heavy pieces of silver to flip up
Yeah.
in the air. It's kind of fun.
Exactly.
Brilliant tool. I love that you shared that one.
And the other piece I love is I love using oracle cards, tarot cards, and there's no, and I think that people who maybe have never used them, and probably most of your listeners have, it's just a way to connect with our intuition. It's just a way to connect to
Mhm.
the big pattern of consciousness, of awareness. This is Tantra. Everything is alive. Everything has meaning. Everything. So like tuning into the patterns is a way that we can discern, and we don't want to get lost in it. You always want to take it with a grain of salt because there's the human and there's the divine, and we're always moving between. But what I find is like using my cards, especially in times of great change,
Mhm.
and when I'm in, and one of the cards that I was getting a lot, I use these beautiful archetype cards from Kim Kron's. They're amazing. I love that they're circular too, like a coin. Um, I was kept getting the empty room, which is another symbol for the void. And the empty room is this idea, like, when you move into a new place and you've got this empty room, like, what am I going to put in here? Like, where's the bed going to go? Where are it's just like a room can become the space, it holds all potentiality of what
Mm.
we bring into that room. And sometimes we have to sit in that room to see the light, to notice the space, to what do I want to bring in here, you know? And
Yeah.
and so there's so many ways to work with that, but the archetype cards I find, or tarot cards or whatever, any oracle card is a great way to just give ourselves some space from our experience and reflect on it a different way. And the question that I love to ask, like my generic question is, what do I need to know?
Yeah. What is I ask the same, like, what is the flavor of my day and what do I need to
Mm,
know around different topics? And yeah, of course, last year I've always played with oracle cards, but I wanted to learn more about the tarot.
hmm.
And last year, of course, I worked with Wildly doing June, July, and August, really studying the tarot and starting to get
Hmm.
a feel for that because it's a deeper level than oracle, I think. And of course, I kept, pulling the tower before that and didn't know why,
Oh,
right?
me
And then,
too.
oh,
Yes.
then I was like, what do you mean? Right? Because I was playing with the same cards for a couple of years, but I didn't really understand them. I was still going back and reading everything.
Right.
So yeah, it was really brilliant to
Mm.
really dive deeper and sometimes I'm like, yeah, okay. And other times I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think so. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, oh, oh, right.
Yeah.
So it's just another way. I also love the pattern app. The
Mm. Oh,
pattern
yes, I have
app
that. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
has been very powerful to remind me of my truth, to ground me into, it's following the different cycles of the moon and stars and eclipses and all this
Mm,
goodness there. And it brings me home and grounds me into my truth that I already know. So I've found that very, very powerful for the last couple of years too.
I use that
There's
too.
there's so much that, is available to us and it's all connected and all aligned. And
Mhm.
again, it comes back to that trust. But if you're struggling to trust yourself at all, this is a beautiful practice to fall into, to learn to cultivate that trust, to find that safety in your own body, to reconnect to your truth, to reconnect to your power, to reconnect to your wisdom. Through the lens of Tantra has been life changing. And what does come from that is I'm so excited for my future. I am
Mm.
so in love. I am so um, deeply held and seen, cherished, loved more than I ever have been in my entire life. And I'm more my true self than I've ever been. and Tantra has allowed for this entire journey. And that is the
Mm.
erotic rebirth and bliss and joy and life that is
Yeah,
available. And I'm
yeah.
excited for it.
Mm. I feel that as we grow, as we mature and we taste that full spectrum, it's like, it was almost like so many people in our culture, I feel like they want to stay in the sweet, the sweet. And yet there's just all the flavors are so important. And to be comfortable with that full spectrum of life experience and being able to navigate it skillfully,
Yes.
that's what it's all about, right? It's like it's not that we are just always going to stay in summer or stay eating pie
No,
and
not at
cake and
all.
candy. We need to nourish ourselves, and going through shadow, going through heartbreak, those are deeply nourishing for the human soul, deeply
Absolutely.
nourishing for us if we can turn towards them in a compassionate, loving way.
And that is what has allowed depth, that has allowed more love in this current relationship where we are going through different ruptures and valleys and peaks and triggers for me, triggers for him. And that's where we're coming together, and how we're holding it afterwards is what's
Mm,
creating that epic love and vulnerability and intimacy.
mm,
And yeah, it's not all butterflies and rainbows, not at all.
mm,
It's going through it together, and doing
yeah.
the work together is so fulfilling. Is so
Yes.
fulfilling.
Yes, and what I'm hearing is what you're saying also is like so important. Yeah, we go through the beauty, we go through the rupture, but then the repair skills
Mm,
of of integrating it. That's
hmm.
also part of the tantric path is melding those two experiences together. So there's the duality of like the pain, the joy, and then it's like bringing it together. And
Yes.
the symbol I love of that is the I'm sure it's kind of not cliche, but like the idea of kintsugi, which is that Japanese, the art form of taking broken pottery and filling the
Mm,
cracks with gold, pure gold or silver, and then the idea that like this is even more beautiful than the perfect bowl. Like the
it
shattered bowl that's been
absolutely
repaired
is.
with gold is even more exquisite and unique because it shows the shatter lines, but they're filled with
Mm,
precious metal. And like this is us, we're these incredibly beautiful containers, and we do get shattered with life, but how we repair our precious bowl, that is the juice, that is the tantric path.
yeah, it's the cracks. It's the cracks that are being refilled. And that is what me and my partner currently are doing. And it is a beautiful journey doing that, refilling those cracks from our
Yeah.
past, from our present, all of it. And that is what has allowed for the most incredible intimacy that,
Mm.
mm,
I'm
yeah,
so I'm so happy for you, and I'm also so happy for me that
I'm so happy for you too.
that
It's been
I'm
quite
also
a journey.
experiencing that and just relishing. And as I get older, like those beliefs of like, oh, my sexuality, my attractiveness, my magnetism are decreasing. No, I am increasing. It's incredible, like how the world is
Exponentially.
showing me that the more I become me, the more I step into this my capacity to hold all of my flavors, the more life shows me that that's exactly what's needed. Like my truth, my
Yes.
vulnerability, my humanness, my messiness, and my perfection. Like the more I can be more of that, this channel that's uniquely myself and your channel uniquely yourself, the more we magnetize the deepest gifts.
Mm. Yes, yes, yes. You put it in such perfect words. Thank you so, so much. We've been together in masterminds and containers since 2000. So we really have witnessed each other for the last 4 years
Yeah,
go through
that's
a
true.
lot.
That is so true.
And
Yeah.
yet we've never met in person.
I know, but
One day.
I love the magic of the virtual world. Like,
I do as well.
I'm so grateful for it, even though sometimes it can be annoying, but like there's so many gifts, and this is one of them, having moments like this where two kindred spirits can come together and have such beautifully reflective, mirroring experiences, and yet have such different lives, and yet come together and really share deeply.
That's what I love, because very much at the core, we are all very much the same. We just don't talk about it, and we need to more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity. I love, so grateful for the space and the wisdom that you have and embody. And I'm so happy for you and your blossoming. And, it sounds like it's really blossoming, even if there's like parts that are in the void state still. I mean, there's always going to be parts of our life where we just don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love the words to put around that void. Thank you for putting words to something I was feeling but wasn't quite wording. So I appreciate that a lot. And
My
as always, I
pleasure.
love connecting with you. And we're going to put all your links in the show notes. But is there anything special you have going on right now, or you want to tell people where they can find you? If they're just listening and they'd rather just listen, please share.
Yeah, I'm actually, like, I would love to offer to your readers this free download for this grief ritual. So I'll give you that link. It's beautiful. I really put a lot of heart into it, and it was really exactly the process I did over and over. Well, I did it twice, I think, mainly, like a big one. But like we said, it can be simple. So there's pieces you can pull out to make it your own. And the other thing that I'm really loving is I'm offering like a heart alchemy breath work. It's like normally to work with me, it's 6 months, and it's a significant financial investment, but I love doing this breath work where we hold space to get a clarity and breathe for 30, 40 minutes, and then harvest that wisdom that comes up in my clients' bodies. So it's a smaller package, 3 months. And I also offer an initial free session for people to taste it and see if it's something they would enjoy. So I'll offer that link,
Yes.
and if people want to book that, they're welcome to take a breath journey, heart alchemy, to really explore grief, heartbreak, and the rebirth on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing those. I appreciate it. And Harmony's work is incredible. And yeah, I have a few free practices as well. I can't remember the names of them right now. I was just trying to look them up, but I'm going to drop a couple in the links as well, that will help you reconnect to your truth and your power and your wisdom, because it is so powerful and we need it. So I'll drop them in there as well.
Mm.
And there was one more thing I was going to say to you, and I don't remember what it was, but that's okay. It's there and gone for now.
Offer heartbreak as a gift. Offer grief as a gift. These are our gifts as much as our beauty and our light.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Delicious. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Kim.
So, so much. Till next time, everyone.
Till next time.